I wanted to dedicate at least my part in this to everyone who came out here tonight in the face of debilitating social anxiety. Everyone who came out here risking sensory overwhelm from the noise and the lights. Anyone who's ever been body-shamed, victim-blamed, denigrated, spat on, treated like you are broken and wrong. You are not. You are okay. I see you. I hear you. And I'm f***ing proud to be one of you.
So, I had an interesting weekend. It's wrestling related. Don't worry, listeners. Don't worry, those people that leave comments on my videos with timestamps to skip the 15 seconds of a wrestling clip I put at the beginning. So Saturday night was True Grit, where it was the Pride show, and I talked about disability pride and sort of revealed that I ain't going to wrestle for long and I'll be in a wheelchair, which is something I'm coming to grips with at the moment. That sort of blew up on BritRest Twitter when True Grit posted the highlights of the speech. So I've made lots of people cry this weekend. There was a lot of people crying in the crowd in that, but it was very good, very positive, very emotionally hard for me, of course, and very scary. And then the next day, I teamed up with a version of Kane who wears a rainbow suit and is called Gain, while I yell, "Taste the cane bow." I fucking love wrestling. It is at once some of the most meaningful stuff I've ever done, and some of the absolute fucking dumbest.
Dumb and meaningful don't have to. They can coexist.
Absolutely.
As someone that wrote a whole book of video game character butt reviews, sometimes a thing can be real fucking stupid, but also, this is my pride and joy.
And you can have
good.
Yeah, you can have these sort of meaningful emotions. And it's what I always say about wrestling. I say wrestling is fucking stupid. I love wrestling. It is for that very reason that I love it. But there can be very emotional things, whether it's well-told stories or honest peeling back of the character that a wrestler will do, just to, like I did on Saturday. So it could be a very interesting thing, but the most important thing to know is that on October 27th in Manchester, the Sisters of Seduction, as we're calling ourselves, Commander Sterling in an Undertaker role and Gain in a gay Kane role will be wrestling. So I've completely forgot, the really deep thing that made everyone cry, where I bared my soul and said really hard things, because I'm tagging with Gay Kane. And that's all I've brought today.
I mean, that's all you needed to bring.
Right? You brought Gay Kane.
Mm-hmm. That was with Pinfall Pro Wrestling, I should say. So, yeah.
I've got something I want to bring up that I've just seen that's video game related, but it's kind of fucking hilarious. Stephen Toledo has just shared a clip from a Capcom shareholder meeting, and it is maybe the best thing I've ever seen a person with a legitimate financial interest in a company ask a company. It's one of those oh my god, why did no one ever think to ask this? Let me read this for you. Wouldn't you be able to capture more profit by bumping up the release date of the next Monster Hunter title, currently scheduled for 2025, to the 2024 season? Shareholder question. Could you just release it earlier so it could make more money?
Oh,
It would make more money if it came out sooner.
Amazing.
Wow.
Could you just bring it out this year? Because I want money this year.
Does everyone remember how Crunch is abusive and shit and hurts people?
Yeah.
And does everyone remember why Crunch often happens? It's because of cunts like that. Fucking hell.
The shareholder just assumed, the game's got to be ready by now. Why not just release a game a year early?
Yeah, they've just been sitting there with it finished all of this time. What the fuck?
Did you consider just release it earlier?
This past Monday, the Jimquisition about AI stealing my content, I talked about how investors and executives and all of that are basically surplus to society's needs. Ironically, for as many redundancies as they indulge in, they are some of the most redundant human beings on Earth, currently using AI to try and make us all as fucking useless as them. And if this don't just fucking speak volumes about it, no knowledge of the industry, no idea how much work goes into it, just expects to sit back and make money.
Also, like, surely if you just skipped a year of marketing, that would in some ways hurt the sales of the game if you just put it out unfinished and without, like, hey, we told you to expect it next year, it's just out now, go.
Yeah.
Well, that worked out really well for Sega, and
I mean...
what was it, the Saturn announcement. Yeah, that worked great.
For years, it's been Konami's business model. Just shit stuff out on shelves and don't tell anyone they did it. Like that time Takfuji couldn't find a copy of his own game in the fucking wild. So I guess there's some sort of precedent for it, but...
It's just not a good one.
The precedent is that the game will fail, like you say, Laura.
Yeah. So there we go.
Fucking
Welcome to
bastards.
Podquisition. We talk about video games. We've done a bit of it already.
Slightly more useful than the average investor is this show. That's our new tagline.
Wow.
I love it. Pretty accurate.
It says nothing.
Who's been playing stuff this week?
I've been playing a game I can't talk about.
Have either of you played anything you can talk about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Conrad,
Yeah.
you wanted to talk about a game. I was just going to tease a big announcement that will go up 5 hours after this does, but I literally can't say anything other than that, so I've done that bit. Hello, Conrad.
Yeah. I bit the bullet on that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Ah!
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it worth 30 buckaroids?
So, you can buy Hades for $25.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good game, that. Quality game. Well worth
Quality
the money.
game. And I suppose if you had already, gotten your fill of Hades as a experience, as a game, and you wanted something that was 80% of that for 120% of the price...
I mean, 80% of Hades sounds pretty decent still.
That's the thing. It's not terrible. It is so painfully obvious that Hades was used as a straight-up blueprint for the design of this game.
Yeah.
It changes names of things. They're now they're not boons, they're turtle powers.
Okay.
It's a lot of the same stuff. You have keepsakes, but they're called artifacts, and they function in much the same way, increasing the likelihood you'll get certain types of turtle powers. And one thing that they do is kind of fun. There's a percentage chance that you might get 2 rewards, and that is so that's something you can buff. And then you have a bunch of abilities that you need a currency that you acquire to spend to improve your abilities. The turtles are distinct. I will give them that. They each come with their own unique attack and special attack, and everyone starts with a tool. The tools can be acquired in play. You can replace the tool you have with one belonging to a different turtle if it comes up. And they all have inspirations, little sort of passive bonuses that are specific to them. And all of these things can be leveled, these inspiration things. And the other characters can even acquire those after boss fights. The next pickup is usually an inspiration or a mastery of some function. Anyway, it's fucking Hades. But it's Hades with people who talk too much. So, quippy one-liners are constant, and they only have about 15 of them, and so you're gonna hear them all the fucking time. The control is interesting in that it has a bit of an auto-target, like it selects the enemy that you think you're going for, which does work to some advantage when playing the Switch version, if you have a problem with drifting analogs, as I do. But if you don't, sometimes you're intending to be targeting one enemy, and the game decides, I'm going to target a different one entirely, which is a little bit annoying. Another thing that happened to me, and this is just a a glitch thing, but boy, that's annoying. I was engaged in a boss fight with Bebop and Rocksteady. Cool fight.
Did they ask the Toitles to say their prayers?
They do, actually.
Excellent.
Yes.
It's a prerequisite for all Turtles games.
Yeah. And Rocksteady is stationary for the most part and firing his gun. And Bebop is moving around the area and doing a bunch of combat. It's kind of like 2 of the 3 sirens in Hades 2. But sometimes I think this game doesn't fully load in all of its assets properly. And so at one point, near the end of my boss fight encounter, I was taking on Bebop over in a corner, laying down some damage, and I see the area field that I know Rocksteady is going to fire in, and I'm like, all right, well, I got to keep an eye out for those bullets so I can dodge those. And then the bullets never came because their graphics didn't spawn in.
Oh.
And I died.
Oh.
And I know that this is what happened because there was an earlier instance where something just didn't load visually that I knew had to be there of a similar type of effect. And I'm like, all right, so it's a little glitchy. Like, so it's 80% of the way there with everything. It does require you to play as all of the turtles if you want to unlock all of the stuff. Turtles have their own reward that they give after boss fights that is used to power their specific, level their specific abilities. But it's a lot of basic runs. I'm not that super into Turtles. Like, it was something that was around when I was a kid, and it was neat, and it had the best fucking action figures anybody made. Like, it had the coolest shit, but I was, like, at that age where I was just not doing action figures quite so much as a kid, and the timing was bad on when the show aired, and so my exposure to Turtles was both less comprehensive and less significant than a lot of my peers. And so I don't know some of these characters, and I'm coming like, who the fuck is this? Who is Shredder's granddaughter? Shredder has a granddaughter? Where did that come from? What is the deal with the big spiky turtle whose name I've been corrected on and forget, and I still want to call Spike, but that's not his name? Why is he teamed up with the Turtles now? And he speaks rather eloquent compared to how I remember that. Like, little things like that.
This one's supposed to be its own self-contained continuity, right?
I think so.
Doesn't mean they're not, like, I imagine every character is being drawn from some other continuity, like it's a mishmash. But yeah, like, I'm someone who was a fan of Turtles as a kid, and I don't know half of these extended characters. I know the Rat King, I know Baxter Stockman's.
Baxter Stockman is mentioned, but I don't know if he appears in it.
Right.
He's the mayor of New York.
Yeah, there's lots of different types of Baxter Stockmans. The one I'm more familiar with, of course, is the cartoon, because that was, Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, as it was called in the UK at the time, because of just a panic about ninjas.
Oh, can't be having nunchucks. Oh, that's emulatable.
Right? America had the satanic panic. We were scared of ninjas, which just seems infinitely more childish. I think they just didn't want kids, like, chucking throwing stars into each other's faces.
Well, at least you got over yours, okay? Because
true.
we haven't gotten over ours.
That's
We're
true.
still
You
doing ours.
do still have women yelling dark-sided at people. It's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But, like I say, on the whole, the game is I'm still playing it. I don't want to play with any turtle other than Raphael, but I don't want to listen to Raphael speak because he's an asshole. So I'm really fucking screwed.
No, but you got it wrong. He's cool but rude. That's Raphael. You must be thinking about some other character, like, one of the other turtles, like Spike or something.
But it is absolutely impossible to play this game and not think of Hades. And
yeah,
not,
imagine.
Even down to the way story is communicated to the player through, you complete a section with a boss fight, and you've had a conversation with a boss, and now there's a new secondary character who's appearing, and you'll talk to them about some stuff, and then when you'll go back to the base, there will be some updates from your team. It's just so wholesale cribbed in a very specific way.
Has the shitting temerity to charge more. I think, honestly, that does a way better job of discussing a problem with its price than I did last week when I mentioned it being on Apple Arcade, which was short-sighted of me. But comparing it to Hades, now that I could get behind. And I'm still interested in the game, but I think what I'm going to do is wait for it to be specifically cheaper than Hades if it ever goes on a sale at that price. If it goes under 25, I'll get it.
You're not wrong. That is a good place to be on it, I think, from the sounds of it. That being said, after all the points you've made, my big takeaway floating about in my head is still, it's trying to be Hades and it's 80% of the way there. And part of me does go, well, I would like to scratch the Hades itch with something that isn't more Hades, and I would probably dig it.
Yeah.
I'd probably have a good time with not quite Hades, but sort of more Hades.
And there's something to be said for, you know, a kind of a major licensed game taking this approach and doing it pretty well. It's not terrible. I think you'll be more interested, Steph, when it comes out on Steam.
Yeah.
Because that price will get batted around. But I don't think it's coming to Steam until like November. But that's the Turtles. What have you all played?
I played a thing that is disappointing in the kind of ways that are unsurprising for who has published it. I played Nintendo World Championships NES Edition.
Oh, okay,
so just come to the Switch.
Everybody on fucking Twitch was playing this yesterday. I'm like, did something happen that the Nintendo World Championship cartridge like got dumped and everyone's playing it or something? Is there some weird rare thing? No, Nintendo is capitalizing on that. Okay.
So this is a new like 40 quid Switch release that has just come out, and the deal with it is, you've got, I believe it's 150 little challenges that are based over like a dozen or so NES games. And they're all small to medium-sized, self-contained little speedrunning puzzles. The very basic ones for games will be things like, how quickly can you get from the start of World 1 in Mario to having a power-up mushroom? Or how, the first one for The Legend of Zelda is how quick can you go into the little cave and get the sword of the old man or whatever. And in single player, it's just, there's all these little challenges and you do them and the game gives you like a little letter rank to tell you, did you do good? And as they start getting a bit longer and you get to like the expert level challenges that are a little bit more involved, this is one of the more interesting things the game does, is that those later challenges, you can look up a little like Nintendo Power style illustrated guidebook for that speedrunning challenge that has illustrations and is like, here's a bunch of tips you might want to consider when trying to do this little speedrun and trying to get your S rank. The thing about this game is I played through all of the challenges and got like, got an A or S rank on most of them, which is like not that hard to do. It doesn't require you to actually be speedrunner level at these things, it just requires you to have done pretty good. There's other modes, and the other modes are where this game feels kind of lacking in the kind of things that would have helped elevate it a little further. So there is no like real-time online rankings for any of this speedrun stuff. Like, you can't look at all your solo single-player times you've set for all these challenges and go, out of curiosity, where am I on the global leaderboard? Like, how fast compared to the rest of the world have I done this challenge? That's just not an option. Can't do it with a friends list. That was something I was looking for, was like, can I at least see, am I the fastest of my friends to do this challenge? There is a weekly challenge where you can either do the easy or the hard one, and it'll be like, here's 5 of the assorted little speedrunning challenges, and you submit times for all of those. You can't use your times you've already set as your personal bests in single player. You have to set a new personal best within the week that you submit. And then a week later, you can find out how you did ranking-wise with other people around the world for those 5 challenges that were that week's challenge. So at the end of a week, you can find out how you did globally at a specific collection of 5 challenges. There is kind of a multiplayer mode. It's sort of like a Fall Guys style mode where you're like thrown in with, I think it's only like 8 people, and every round a couple of people are relegated who got the worst times. But you're doing it against ghost data, and it's seemingly entirely random what ghost data you're going to get paired with and whether that will make this infuriatingly easy or impossibly difficult for your skill level as you do the various challenges and try and not be the worst at them to get kicked out. And that's sort of it. And I didn't have a bad time with it by any means, but I feel like, if nothing else, just having access to, like, here's a global leaderboard of times, or even just here is a leaderboard of your friends' times, would have made it a lot easier to feel like there was reason within the game itself, without having to use external tools, to encourage you to keep high score chasing or speedrun chasing beyond, I did well enough that the game gave me an S rank. And some of the later challenges in it are longer, but not necessarily more fun. There's one in particular I think of that is, it's a Metroid challenge where it's jump up this very tall series of steps and eventually go through a door on the right when you eventually get there. And it's like 40 seconds long. And the challenge of it is, can you avoid fucking up anywhere within 40 seconds? And by being longer, it's not asking you to do anything more challenging, it's just asking you to do it for a longer period of time without any fuck-ups. And it kind of takes away the biggest thing that I think this game has going for it, which is with the shorter challenges, because the game loads really quickly and there is very little delay in jumping back into a challenge. On the shorter challenges, there is kind of an appeal to do it again, fail, do it again, fail, do it again, fail. High score chasing that fraction of a second. And that doesn't stick around as well when the length of levels kind of jumps up pretty suddenly. It's got the aesthetics of something that is trying to appeal to real speedrunning communities, like the way their speedrun timer on screen is implemented is going to be very familiar to anyone who's ever used Live Split for tracking their speedrun timings. But the challenges that are being set are very weird, isolated little things you're being asked to do. I think part of my thoughts about this is, if these were structured in such a way that by the time you'd done all of the challenges for a game, you could jump into trying to speedrun that game and have learnt some things that would actually functionally help you towards a decent speedrun time of the full game, like, that might have had, like, an interesting appeal to it, gamifying practicing segments of a speedrun in a way that you could stitch together and maybe try a speedrun yourself afterwards. But that's not what this is. Tasks you are being asked to do not in any way correlate to the ways that speedrunners actually play these games. And I'm left kind of struggling to work out who this is for. I would much rather have seen the really good Wii U pair of games that never got ported to Switch, NES Remix, which was take a bunch of old NES games and do weird shit with them, like complete this Mario level, but the gravity is weird and all the surfaces are ice, go, go, go. Those were pretty fun, and there's part of me that's like, this is none of the chaos or creativity that had going for it, and doesn't lean in enough to getting competitive with your friends and other people to have that kind of appeal. It's a weird game. It's not bad, but I don't see any reason why I would keep playing it.
Well, okay then.
Yeah.
That is a shame.
It's a thing I played that it's so-so. What about you, Steph? You played anything you can talk about this week?
Yes. I have played 2 games.
Ooh.
Let's go with the one that's contemporary. It came out last week. It's called Flintstone. It's got a... No, it's not. That's a Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
That is.
Flintlock. That's it. It's got a subtitle as well, but I can't remember what it is. I think
The Siege of Dawn.
The Siege of Dawn. That doesn't even mean anything. I've been playing for hours. There is no siege. There is no dawn. You can't just say words. The amount of games that are of dawn. I mean, there's a lot more games that are chronicles, but there's quite a few games that are of dawn. So this is being called by them a Souls-lite, whatever that means. It's a Souls-like by way of your Focus Home Interactive level Eurojank kind of deal.
Okay.
It's not done by Focus Home Interactive. Like, they're not publishing it. I don't believe it's done by, like, any of the usual suspects, like Spiders or anything. But it has that feel, and it is quite janky. I hated it at first. Then I began to tolerate it. And now I sort of like it. So, I have softened during the sort of grace period I've given it, which is cool enough. It's rough. It is... There are, like, a dozen better Souls-like games to get into, but it's okay. It's okay. You are a sapper from, like a World War I style sort of thing. And the first sort of introduction, I won't even call it the first, like, level, but, like, the introductory area is actually set in trenches, while you're, like, you've got an axe and you're, like, chopping up, like, undead. And then it just goes to sort of generic looking fantasy land, which is a shame because that intro is really interesting. Like trench warfare with a fantasy Dark Soulsy twist. That I like. When you get into the game proper, it is just sort of like castles and hills and some mountains and like fairly open-ish areas. Certainly nothing like the intricate level design of Dark Souls or something like that. They're just fairly open. Again, Focus Home Interactive action RPG style. Like, you know, Vampire or Greedfall or something like that. Except the combat is you know, takes a lot of cues from Software, and it's got the usual death mechanic stuff. They do a thing where rather than you just getting they call it renown here. It's just souls. Just all games call them souls. Rather than just getting souls for killing things, they're kind of held in escrow, and a multiplier is added to them as you do things, as you kill enemies, as you perform like jumping feats or do little slides on things. And that all adds up to a percentage modifier. And you can cash that in at any time. But if you get hit once, like if you take any damage, the modifier goes away. So that's an interesting, like, risk-reward kind of thing that can let you, at times, if you're, like, are really good at it, significantly increase the amount of souls you get, which is good, because otherwise it's a fairly grindy game. Like, it just takes a long time to get anywhere near enough souls to get anything you want. And that's for skills and weapon upgrades and buying cosmetics and everything. And they're all like thousands and thousands immediately. Well, they start off sort of 500-ish, but then straight after that, we're talking multiples of thousands. It is fine. It does have a really cool mechanic for its platforming. You have gunpowder and you throw it underneath yourself to do a double jump or do a dodge forward. And there are some puzzles that, like, environmental puzzles that make use of that. But it also just looks really cool. You've got a little magic dog who you can use to hit enemies with, and that builds up a sort of gauge that when that's full, will let you do critical hits. There are really annoying shield enemies that you've got to parry, and the game really wants you. It really wants to push this countering and parrying stuff. You've got a handgun. And when an enemy does something that puts a red, like a little red flash on them, they're doing an attack that you can't block and will be hard to dodge, so you need to use your gun to break it up. The thing is, the gun won't break up other attacks that aren't that. And other attacks that aren't that are really quick and terribly telegraphed. And for, say, a shield enemy, an enemy with a shield, what it wants you to do is wait for it to attack, parry it, and that'll let you do a counterattack and take the shield away. Which works, it's great in theory, but when even the most basic enemies have those special attacks that have to be shot, and super quick regular attacks, and once you've made a decision on what button you're going to press, you are committed. So, and sometimes the red dot will appear after they've done a wind up, depending on the enemy. So the parrying and countering systems are way harder than they should be, because they're just badly implemented. They're poor. The telegraphing for the player is just inadequate. There are elements that sort of similar to that throughout that make some of the deaths feel really cheap. But as you go on, once you get some upgrades under you and start learning to make use of the magic dog to do things like lift an enemy up in the air and just hold them for a few seconds so that you can get some shots in, or build up that gauge, or do some other attacks. And once you learn to be really aggressive and not worry too much about the parrying and the countering, because even enemies with shields, you can build up that gauge, and once you hit them with a critical, you'll take the shield anyway. So I found that not being too cautious and methodical, and that can lead to taking some damage, and it really doesn't take much to absolutely chew through your health. But I have gotten along way more with the game since I just thought, fuck it, this parrying is inadequate. And now I almost never parry, even the guys with the shields. I will shoot the gun if it's obvious enough, but with that gunpowder dodging, often dodging is pretty good. And because you can change direction, you can dodge one way, use the gunpowder to then change direction. It's really quite cool and satisfying to dodge around an enemy like that. The player can do quite a bit between all of these systems, and it's all about working out which ones are good and which ones are useless. And once you focus on the things that work, it's enjoyable enough. It is not one I would recommend people go out and immediately buy. It is on Game Pass though, so that is a thing for as long as Game Pass remains fucking useful. Yeah, so I would say if you've got Game Pass, if you've got access to it and you really like Souls-likes and you like Eurojank, this is something to check out. Otherwise it's not. There you go.
Yeah. What about you, Conrad? Did you play anything else this week?
No, that's pretty much been my week, has been these toidles.
I've been playing a little bit of other stuff, nothing that I'm going to go into huge amounts of depth on. I've started playing Arranger, which is a game I played a demo for a little while back and talked about on the show. This is a top-down pixel art game where anytime you move, the world shifts with you on the same axis, so if you move your character up or down, anything in the same column will move up and down with you. If you move left or right, anything in the same row will move left or right with you. And the world wraps around, so if you go off the left edge of an area, you will appear back on the right edge of that area, and so on. And puzzle solving is based around working out how best to navigate spaces and to rearrange where things are to move them around the world. I really have enjoyed what I've played of it so far. My big concern I had with the demo that has not come to pass when playing the actual game was I really struggle with spatial orientation, and I was concerned I would hit a wall with this game, or I just was struggling to work out how to progress, and that's really not happened, and I think that it's in part due to a combination of really good gradual tutorialization and very gradual complexity increasing on the puzzles. I've not felt like there's any point where there has been a steep jump that has required me to suddenly be better at manipulating things in space than I was before, and that's been really nice. But also, I think that everything is just very snappy and responsive in how it moves, and I think it really helps that, generally speaking, the game's design is such that it's very difficult to move things into a truly unresolvable position. Because of the fact that, like, unlike a game where you're, say, pushing blocks around and you could push something into a corner and no longer be able to get behind it to push it the other way, you just stand next to a thing and walk away, and it will move away in the same direction as you, giving you a clear space to get behind it and push it or whatever. And that has made me a lot more willing to just kind of fuck around with a puzzle if I'm stuck, and not fear that I'm going to move something into a position that's going to cause me problems that take me like 10 minutes to undo. And that combination has meant that I've gotten on with these puzzles a lot better than I expected, which is really nice. The plot is so far pretty so-so, but it's well written. I've enjoyed the humour of a lot of the character writing, even if the overall plot direction is a little predictable. It's not done anything particularly interesting so far in terms of catching me off guard with where its wider plot is going, but it's well written, it looks good, and I've been having fun with the puzzles. It's been a nice dip in and out of it game that I haven't felt like I'm going to lose too much if I play it in very small bursts. So I'm having fun with that. The only other thing I've been playing is I started replaying a game I haven't played in a few years now, Danganronpa V3, which is the third in a series of games about a bunch of kids get locked in a school by a robot bear going, hey, you gotta kill each other and then do trials to work out who killed someone, and if you don't work out...
It's like Anime Saw.
It's kind of Anime Saw.
Yeah, I played the first one. I liked it. I reviewed it for The Escapist back in the day, and I added one little sentence about its trans rep. And that inspired essays from commenters. One little sentence,
yes.
for fuck's sake.
Yes. The first Danganronpa has some gender stuff going on in it that is a bit mixed in how it's handled, I'll give it that. I will say 2 and 3 do a much better job of not retreading that particular well. But yeah, it's basically a motivation will be given, someone will do a murder, that you do your sort of like Phoenix Wright-esque try and collect all the clues and work out who did the murder, but it's all... If you thought like Phoenix Wright was over the top and exaggerated, this is turning a lot of that up to 11. It is very exaggerated and over the top. The reason I've been replaying Danganronpa V3 is it is my favourite of the Danganronpas. I think it is the one that does a really good job of understanding the tropes and the expectations that the first couple of games in that series did, and taking some quite bold steps to go, we're gonna do shit that we know you are just going to assume is not on the table as an option. And it pulls off a few very effective twists that I think only really work because it's game 3 in a series that has established the idea that certain conventions are just part of how the series works. And it's not constant. It has its moments of following the tropes so that you're not just constantly going, okay, what's it trying to push back against at the moment? I still think that the opening murder mystery of Danganronpa V3 is maybe the peak of that series, and I was just kind of craving going back through that first mystery, and it was as good as I remembered it. Replaying through the first mystery, you get a very different experience of, oh, the clues were there, in a way that walks the line very well of, you never lied to me about what information I was given, but you did a great job of misdirecting the intention away.
Right. That's always a hard thing. Heavy Rain, of course, tried to do that with its big twist.
Yeah.
It's always the one I think of.
Heavy Rain is, I think, a good example of a game that doesn't do it right.
Yeah, like you want to misdirect, but never lie. Never lie to the viewer. Unless it's a character, but the story can't.
There's no moment in this when replaying it where I've gone, oh, there wasn't enough time for X thing to happen. It has been remarkably consistent in the clues that are there. So that's been really nice. I've been enjoying going back through that. And, yeah. What about you, Steph? You played anything else you want to talk about?
I have. I played a far less contemporary game. My favourite game of all time. I was in I wasn't in a great mood last week. Had a lot going on, and there was a lot of disappointing setbacks with various aspects of my life. So I thought I'd cheer myself up by playing Silent Hill 2. Something upbeat, you know?
Yeah.
I'm on my second playthrough now, which I'm live streaming at twitch.tv/Jim Sterling. God, it's a good game. I often say when asked what my favourite game is, I always say it's a close run thing between Silent Hill 2 and Bloodborne. But then when I play Silent Hill 2 again, all doubt goes. Having finished it a couple nights ago, yeah, it is my favourite game of all time. It's amazing, and because of a story that has been imitated before, but has never been attempted with that level of meaning and subtlety before, and that level of maturity when it comes to the subject matter. And despite the voice acting, a fair bit of accuracy, because it's not just, as Silent Hill Ascension put it, it's trauma! Like, there's some accurate portrayals, even if they're not all that accurate in the performance stakes, of mental illness, of trauma. Angela, of course, being a character who displays signs of regression, very clear self-blame, constant apology. You know, it's not perfect, but this was 2001 with a video game of all things. The stuff that game is narratively doing. Like, when I was streaming the other day, someone pointed out a great bit about the character of Eddie when you first meet him. And James just sort of, as you would, just sort of tells him to be careful. And Eddie looks really confused. But we know that's not about the monsters, because he mentions having seen those. And, and I never picked up on it before, but chat pointed out, he's not used to anyone giving a shit. He's confused that someone at least cared enough to give the pleasantry of be careful. That level of kind of internalized self-loathing and stuff. Again, there's other media out there that goes into this stuff with a lot more depth and subtlety. But in the video game space, there is a reason Silent Hill 2 still holds up. I can play it today. I have been playing it recently. And aside from some of the mechanics, the actual tone, the style of it, and honestly, some of the mechanics as well, hold up wonderfully. I can still happily play through that game and not feel like it's dated, even with the dated elements. The Silent Hill series back then had a map system that is still really fucking good, as James sort of scribbles on doors that can't be open and draws a little line on ones that are locked so you know where to go later. Real simple, but using just red squiggles, it clearly communicates where you've been, where you might need to go. The atmosphere, including the ambient noise and the ambient music, and some of the horrible, dread-inspiring sound effects and stuff, which you've got to give them props. Again, if we look at this in the context of 2001, they randomize some noises so that if you play it a second time, things won't be in the right place. And that's just sound. You could play through it a dozen times, and there are some sound effects so rare, you will never hear them. And then one day someone else might be playing it, and then there's suddenly whispering in this room or crying in this room. And with the internet but not being so ubiquitous back then, and this being No, it was pre-YouTube and that. Wasn't so easy to correlate, like, catalogue this stuff. Things that are little, but for the time, would have been so much work, like James leaving bloody footprints when he walks over the monsters he kills, which seems like an extravagance, but feeds into the story, as you do need to be reminded at all subtle times that you're killing things. And that feeds into, you know, what the story builds up to and all of that stuff. It's very much that red letter media thing of you might not have noticed, but your brain did. And again, what other games were doing that at this time? Resident Evil, fantastic set of games. I fucking love Resi 1, I fucking love Resi 2. But they were B-movie schlock. And that was the other big horror game, the other big survival horror. And you look at, I'm not just going to use this as an excuse to slag off Bloober Team, but they are perhaps the perfect example of a horror developer that is in love with Silent Hill 2 and absolutely lacks the nuance and the understanding of the subject matter to do it justice. We also see this with sort of the Silent Hill games made after Team Silent, where they kept dipping back to the Silent Hill 2 well, ignoring the other games and how they portrayed Silent Hill, to the point where now people just think of Silent Hill as this place where guilty people go, which was not. That's where James went to deal with his guilt, but that was a game about, in you know, some non-insignificant part, guilt. Silent Hill 3 was not about that. Silent Hill 4 was not about that. They were two very different things. But then, you know, once it got in the hands of people who were fans of Silent Hill 2, they just wanted to recreate that. And I think that's a real shame. You know, Silent Hill to me is more about feeding off of just strong feelings, not just guilt. And I hate that it's been reduced in that way, kind of shrunk in terms of what it can do. So yeah, Silent Hill 2, I just love it so much. I don't have enough good things to say about it. If I had any bad things, I'd be like, fuck the lying figures, they're horrible to fight, and fuck Toluca Prison. But other than that, I played through that game so many times back in the day. I got all the endings. And I am no completionist. I struggle even with games I adore. I've never gone for a platinum trophy in anything. I don't have time for that. I got every ending in Silent Hill 2 back in the day. And here I am, like, playing it on stream immediately after playing it through the last time. I've lost count of how many times I've played it. More than any other narrative-based game, that's for damn sure. Silent Hill 2, yeah. Honestly, my best one from games.
It's a good one from games.
Mm-hmm.
Right, with that all done, should we talk about a couple of newsy bits before we wrap up?
Let's
Why
do it.
not?
So there's a couple of stories here that I'm going to bundle together. We can get through the first couple quickly because they're a little bit of setup. But we now have dates for when Call of Duty games are coming to Game Pass. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 is going to be coming to Game Pass on July 24th, which is today, the day we're recording this. The next Call of Duty will be coming to Game Pass on the 24th of October, which is after Game Pass has had its price hike, and day one Game Pass games have been taken away from people who don't buy the most expensive Game Pass tier.
And that is what it is. Let's make absolutely clear of that. It's being taken away. It's the thing that I've railed on publishers so many times for in the past. They are falsifying a sense of value by devaluing what they have. You know, it's a very common tactic, but it does need hammering home.
Yeah, and it feels pretty transparent that they're putting last year's one on Game Pass now, while it's at its current price point, to go, hey, start associating Game Pass with Call of Duty, so that when the next one drops, oh, I want to keep playing Call of Duty on Game Pass, oh, I guess I've got to upgrade my subscription to keep doing that. On this note, you remember how the FTC was kind of, a little bit skeptical of Microsoft purchasing Activision Blizzard King, specifically because they worried about some of the stuff around Game Pass and Call of Duty? Well, the FTC has put out a statement saying that they view these changes to Game Pass that have just been announced as making Game Pass a degraded product, and that by doing this, Microsoft has delivered, quote, exactly the sort of consumer harm from the merger that the FTC had alleged, which they're not wrong. This is exactly what they warned would happen, and it did happen, and maybe they shouldn't have let the merger go through. Xbox does not like that assessment of the situation. They say it's wrong and misleading to call their revised Game Pass tiers degraded, and that it's the FTC's fault for barely mentioning concerns about subscriptions at trial.
Well, I mean, the one thing that they have right is that this is all the FTC's fault.
Yeah, they capitulated, and now the thing they warned would happen has happened, that they didn't.
The thing that they
keep
warned would
fighting
happen
to stop happening. Yeah,
the thing that they
did
yeah.
warn.
Yeah.
The thing they knew would happen if they capitulated has happened when they did so.
Well, good. I'm glad that they were right, at the very least. They were accurate in their assessment. Their decision-making skills still need some work.
Yeah. I think the more interesting thing about this is how Xbox is trying to argue that Game Pass hasn't been degraded to the FTC. And their argument basically seems to be, well, getting rid of day one games on Game Pass isn't degrading the service, because our competitor, Sony, doesn't give you day one games on their equivalent service, and their service is selling well, so clearly people don't care that much about it, and, taking it away isn't really degrading
but you
it
haven't
or
done
anything.
it yet.
The difference is Sony didn't give people day one games and then take them away while increasing the price. You did do that. You are taking your service and degrading it compared to your previous service.
Yeah.
Yeah, to read their quote, I found the quote about the Sony thing. Even in the alleged subscription market, Call of Duty is not being withheld from anyone who wants it, and there remains no evidence anywhere of harm to competition. Sony's subscription service continues to thrive, even as they put few new games into their subscription day and date, unlike Microsoft. Thus, the transaction continues to benefit competition and consumers, exactly what the district court correctly found. So Xbox are basically going, well, Sony doesn't do day one games, so you can't tell us we're doing a monopoly by taking away day one games.
Yeah, the only problem with that
gave you.
is this isn't fucking about Sony. This isn't... That's just whataboutism. That's all that is. That's whataboutism, which, last I checked, is somewhat fallacious as a point to make.
Yeah. You previously gave a service for a price and then took stuff out of it and put the price up. Doesn't matter what other people are charging for whatever they're doing. You made your service worse and more expensive.
I've had plenty of criticism for Sony not doing that. And they've just, any shred of an incentive they may have had to do that. Because now they don't need to compete with a service that's doing better. They're competing with a service that's doing the fucking same. Fuck's sake.
You're not wrong. Yeah. Other bits that we had happen this week. Ubisoft put out a statement that pissed off people on all sides of the political spectrum. So that's fun. So you might have been aware of some of the grumbling that's been going on from right-wingers recently, but the short version is, the next Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Shadows, has two protagonists, one of whom is a woman, and one of whom is a black samurai who is based on a historical figure who existed, and right-wingers have been going blah blah blah, stop calling this man a samurai, he's not a samurai, blah blah blah. From what I can tell from looking at historians who study this shit, there's very little debate about the fact that he was a samurai. He was... the various factors that seem to determine if someone is considered a samurai is, was he given a sword by someone of nobility? Was he given a stipend? Was he working for someone of this political class? These things generally accepted are, this person was a samurai, but right-wingers are like, black person in Japan couldn't possibly be.
There's a lot more evidence for that than Leonardo da Vinci collaborating with a secret cabal of assassins. I mean, if we're going to talk about historical accuracy here.
Exactly. But regardless, it's been a lot of Gamergate 2 shitbags going... don't call him a samurai, don't call him a samurai.
Let's not forget that, and this happened with actually Flintlock as well. There's a lot of people slagging that off because, oh, sweet baby ink, which I'm so fucking sick of hearing about that shit. So much of what's going on in gaming right now with these pushes for Gamergate 2.0 can all be traced back to one man, whose name I'm not going to mention because he gets enough attention as it is.
Yeah.
But he is Imagine Elon Musk, who doesn't even have riches to hide behind. Just the loser bits. Who is clinging on to the fact that Gamergate was when he felt most powerful and on top. And is desperately trying to make it happen again. So much of it is being traced back to this one fucking loser who keeps whipping up controversies from literal thin air.
I don't even remember him being that big a deal 10 years ago when Gamergate was a thing. I feel it.
No, but it was him at his most powerful.
Well, that's oof. But it just like he sort of seemed to me to almost come out of nowhere with this shit in the last 6 months. Like, I don't know what it is that got him additional attention, because I people like this, I don't expect a capacity for change, so I don't think it's like they suddenly became like this. So I don't know who noticed.
No, like I was aware of him.
Well, sure,
like 10
I was
years
aware
ago,
of him.
and I blocked him because of all this shit. I think he's just doing what a lot of these grifters do now. Like, he's raising to... I watched it with someone else whose name I won't mention. He bunny hops from controversy, well, non-troversy to non-troversy, and then gets his stupid opinions shared by everyone on all political, like parts of the spectrum. Not to both sides it, but, I'm not really doing that. But it really, both sides retweet the guy for different reasons. But that level of prominence helps because people, the kind of people that listen to that drivel, don't care how many times he's dunked on and how many times he's saying incorrect and stupid things. Because none of them have any real skin in the game. So they don't mind looking stupid. They're just in it to hate. And that's how this happens. I've seen it happen too many times. These nobodies who rise to become hugely influential because everybody starts talking about them.
So to pull back to the update on this,
yes,
Ubisoft put out a lengthy statement.
A lot longer than any statements they had to say about abuse that they were
yeah. And I'm gonna give you like a couple of quotes to like skim through this. So first page out of 4, they talk about we've seen some criticism from players, including you, our Japanese players. We share your passion for history and deeply respect your care for the historical and cultural integrity of your rich heritage. Moving on. They spend the second page basically going, we never intend these games to be historically accurate. They're fiction. Our intention has never been to present any of our Assassin's Creed games, including Assassin's Creed Shadows, as factual representations of history or historical characters. We aim to spark curiosity and encourage players to explore. It's designed first and foremost to be an entertaining video game. They basically start apologizing for suggesting that this main character was a samurai and capitulating to the idea that it's up for debate.
Yeah. It was this kind of corporate capitulation and fear that allowed Gamergate to get as bad as it did. It's worth bringing it up because we are coming up on August. 10 years. Yeah. 10 years of Augusts since that. And as we've seen from them, like, winding up to pitch with the Sweet Baby bullshit, they want it back, and they want to... I'm expecting August to suck.
Yeah, the last bit I'll quote from it was, while Yasuke is depicted as a samurai in Assassin's Creed Shadows, we acknowledge that this is a matter of debate and discussion. We have woven this carefully into our narrative. And this pissed off both sides, because people on the left were like, no, it's really not up for debate. The consensus among historians is he was a samurai. And the only reason people are arguing otherwise is because he's black and they're fucking racists. And the people on the right are going, you didn't go far enough. You should have said he wasn't a samurai. You shouldn't have said it was up for debate. You should have denied he was a samurai and taken him out of the game or whatever. And, like, all they've done is they've emboldened the right to continue shouting about it, because... To read from this, we greatly value your feedback and encourage you to continue sharing your thoughts. Which is like, hey, all of you who've been shouting racist shit at the dev team, keep it up. We give you permission to keep telling us to not have this black samurai in our game. And it's just the most, like, weaselly fucking response, and all it's done is given fucking fuel to the right-wingers to go... Oh, they gave us some ground, let's keep it up.
And that's the thing. They always want more. You can't mollify these people. Ubisoft ignored all the people calling for accountability for the abuse. Like, I don't just bring that up to make a point, like make a sassy little point. I bring it up to make a point I'm fucking furious about. They were able to just breeze past that, and they're big enough, and their game is mainstream enough that they can breeze past this. And yet, they didn't. And they can't claim that they did it to save people from being harassed, because, as you said, they've more or less invited the harassment to continue. Cowardice.
Yeah. Cowardice of the highest fucking degree. Other stuff, we got a couple of quick ones we can crack out. Humble Games has laid off all of its staff, and this is mainly of note because, you know who owns Humble Games? Ziff-Davis, who own IGN, who recently acquired basically every games journalism outlet in the UK, about like a month ago, went on a big acquisition spree, and then laid off a shit ton of people in response to having bought a bunch of people. That thing we continually see, someone makes a big acquisition and then lays off a bunch of people completely unrelated to recoup those costs.
I mean, IGN effectively slaughtered British games journalism.
A little bit.
I mean, I'll step off of slaughtered and go with decimated, but they caused significant fucking damage, because there's not a lot of significant independent publications left.
Nope.
And they turfed out so many good journalists. There are journalists I've known for fucking years who are true veterans who were just turfed out, and it fucking sucks.
Yeah. We got one last thing we can end on that's not quite so grim.
Yay!
There's a competition currently running where you can win an Xbox controller that looks like Deadpool and it's got his arse on the back.
Perfect.
So you can hold his arse in your hands while you're playing your video games.
Excellent.
And I hate that it's a random drawing competition. I wish it was something that I could do, you know, I could win via skill or merit.
Or just buy.
I would like to buy this controller, but if it has to be a competition, I would like to be able to use the fact that I have made a career out of loving fictional character butts in some way to get this into my home, because I want to squeeze Deadpool's fucking cheeks.
Do you think the cheeks are soft?
I need the cheeks to be soft.
Like, I want them to be of a different material that are slightly squeezable. I need that.
They refuse to say. If they weren't squeezable, and I won this competition and won this controller and they weren't squeezable, I would send the controller back in
and
disgust.
say, "Hey, this is broken."
Yeah, you forgot to put the squeeze in the
This
butt.
does not include all of its functions.
I want it to be like one of those fucking boob mouse mats that
yes,
exist.
exactly.
Right? I need it to be like a little bit lurid. I need it to be a little bit fucking gross.
And they should too, because that's their whole marketing strategy. Like, you saw the popcorn buckets. And I'm still mad, by the way. All right? Ryan Reynolds, you have PR people, you've got lots of people who are creative and writing all around you. The popcorn bucket war is how it should be phrased, not the war of the popcorn buckets. What the fuck? That needed editing. Call me. I will edit your nonsense. No, really, call me. Call me. I need the job, Ryan. Please.
Look, I'll snipe Conrad. I'll take the job in exchange for one of these ass controllers.
God damn it!
I think that's it. We done. We did it.
Good for us.
We done did a show.
We done did a show. Well, Laura, you mentioned at the beginning of the show a book about butts, which is one of the many things you have shared with the world. So if you could share with the listeners some info about that and how to find you.
Well, you can find all the stuff I do at Laura K. Buzz pretty much everywhere on the internet. Laura K. Buzz on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Patreon, that's the one that pays the bills, Blue Sky, Mastodon, all the things you'll find me at Laura K. Buzz. We are back with a new episode of Control Alt Access that will be up by the time you hear this, in which we talk about a whole bunch of interesting stuff, including, surprisingly, some of the positive accessibility stuff that came out of TwitchCon EU this year, which is kind of surprising. What about you, Conrad? Whereabouts are you on the internet?
Oh, you can find me at Conrad Zimmerman on Instagram and Blue Sky. You can hang out with me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thatconradzimmerman, where I stream on Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays. You could buy anti-capitalist propaganda and Jimquisition merchandise from me at mercenarycreative.com. I also make audiobooks. Those are at conradreads.com. And you could hear me talking about snacks on the podcast Let's Talk About Snacks, available wherever fine podcasts are casting. And everything that I do online gets supported through Patreon at patreon.com/fistshark. And you know who else has a Patreon? Stephanie Sterling.
That is true. Patreon.com/Jimquisition, which supports this and the video series and all of that. Do check out this week's Jimquisition on the Jim Sterling YouTube channel. It's about how AI stole my content, and that is what it's called. Many people have said it was one of my very best ones of recent time. It is very angry and very righteously so. Also, if you look up True Grit Wrestling, either on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, do look for the clip or the video of speech highlights that I gave on Disability Pride, which I gave at the last True Grit show. I am immensely... it was the scariest and the most important thing I've done in wrestling, as far as I'm concerned. So do check that out. My next wrestling dates, I've got them penciled in, but I've not confirmed with the fucking promoters. But I should be with PCW at the Preston Flag Market on August 14th. And, I have got the other ones. September 1st, I'm in Tidal for Tidal in Huddersfield. And then September 20th, I will be back in Leeds for True Grit. And if you can get to Leeds on the 20th, I do recommend it, because the Commander has spicy plans. That's that, though. That's all the spice you're getting today. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.